There has never been a time in Apex's history where the game has had as many adjustments as it has had for Season 16, and we didn't even get a new legend. Class reworks, legend changes, and even the weapon meta have seriously shaken things up to the point where no legend has been left untouched. Let's get right to ranking every legend based on their general power, combat capabilities, and support potential. We start off at C tier, where we do have a few legends that are fine or okay in Apex. They can have some moments of brilliance, but overall are not really anything special, and there are still just going to be better alternatives. You may be wondering where D tier is, which are the poor legends, and I truly don't think any legend in the game is bad right now, which is pretty nice that basically everything is viable if you are playing it properly, and it really depends on the player. I unfortunately am putting Revenant on the bottom of my list. I struggled greatly with where to put Revenant, between C, C+, or B, but I ended up putting him on the bottom mainly due to his poor ultimate ability and mega situational and positional based passive ability. Starting with the ultimate though, it can be very good if you are well coordinated and playing with the proper team, but if you are not doing this, and even if you are coordinating, I find that the ultimate is a bigger liability than it is actually useful. There's way too many variables that can frankly just go wrong. Not having positioning, proper distance to enemies, not getting third-partied, not having brainless teammates shoot that ultimate when they get back, the list goes on. Revenant's passive of climbing still remains a little underrated for a passive ability, as you can more or less silently flank enemies and climb on them, which can be very difficult to counter. I think the best ability for Revenant though is his tactical silence. The ability to shut down the majority of the most picked legends and movement legends in the game is pretty huge. Revenant could see more viability with the Wraith and Pathfinder buffs, so you will want to monitor this, but he is way too situational dependent and he greatly needs some love, and rumor is it is on the way pretty soon. The first borderline B tier legend is going to be Season 15's Catalyst. When she first released, I put her pretty much in the middle, and I knew it could go either way. Unfortunately, she is just a little bit too weak for my liking. With that said, the ability to scan recon beacons through her new passive is of course a pure buff, and it is pretty nice to have, but her setup capabilities to lock down areas are a little weak when you compare it to Wattson or Caustic. Her passive is mega situational, as you have to be around buildings to make use of it, and her tactical spikes are very obvious and easy to avoid, but they do have some uses. Her ultimate for me is the best part, as traversing large open areas and fighting around by peeking in and out is a very good thing to do, and I do think Catalyst is a little faster and has better combat capabilities than some of her other counterparts. I will say, if you are solely playing ranked, I think she is a lot better than C+, as generally you are going to be sticking around more buildings, but for general play, which is what this list is about, Catalyst isn't bad, but I'd love to see some buffs in the height of her ultimate, or maybe even the tactical spikes. Next is a legend who I am very fond of, and I am a little surprised I'm putting her way down here, but this is going to be Ashe. Ashe is very good at what she does, but the introduction of the survey beacon to the recon class kind of and definitely hurts her as a legend a little. Since all those recon legends can find out where enemies are, Ashe's passive does not per se have as much power or at least uniqueness as it used to. Her tactical is definitely the weakest part of her kit, and oftentimes players can just move out of it or it is a non-factor. Faster traveling speed, maybe 2 charges, maybe a little bit more damage to it would definitely help her out. The biggest thing Ashe still has going for her though is going to be the ultimate ability, which is wild at creating aggressive plays or escaping out of bad situations in an instant. Even this though is going to have a harder time competing with the faster 350 meters or so zip lines or that super long Wraith portal. Ashe is a good alternative aggressive legend and assault legend, but there are too many other legends that do similar things that have a lot more usefulness, or their abilities are just straight up stronger. I am putting my previous main and favorite legend as the final C+ legend, and this is going to be Crypto, but I do want to put some huge disclaimers on, as Crypto has the potential to be much higher than this. Arguably, Crypto has one of the most versatile kits in the entire game if you are playing in a slightly more methodical way. However, this is not what Apex is really great for, and we are ranking on general playability. The big problem is going to be that everything is tied into a singular ability, the tactical drone. Without the tactical, Crypto is just a civilian on the battlefield. If you are playing ranked, I think you can bump him up all the way to A tier, as being able to remotely do a ton of actions, from seeing how many teams are nearby, grabbing cars, and respawning players at respawn beacons, and also hitting those survey beacons is very good. Ultimate EMPing to farm damage, level up the Evo shields, and just being aggressive is absolutely top tier as well, but it does have a long cooldown, and again, it is dependent on the drone. Sometimes you're also going to be out of commission while you get that perfect placement, and this is an issue on its own. As I hinted at, Crypto does get that new passive ability of pinging the survey beacons, so this is definitely a massive step up, but the legend himself I think still needs a little work, such as being able to remotely move the drone, kind of like Vantage's bat, but maybe it has a cooldown. I will say that the huge hits to Bloodhound and Seer's kit could also make him a much more attractive option. Moving into the B tier are the legends who are definitely good, decent, and sometimes viable in the meta, depending on the way the squad is playing or even the mode. The first B tier legend is going to be Gas Daddy. Caustic saw no changes to his kit, but he does see the small buff of being able to scan the recon beacons through his class perk. This is definitely going to be helpful if you are a ranked warrior and you are trying to grind higher placement. However, Caustic as a whole feels a little underwhelming when you compare it to what he once was. Caustic is really good at keeping enemies away from the team due to his gas, but beyond this, he isn't the greatest in a combat scenario anymore, outside of using his ultimate. Gas traps are easily destroyable, and players are finally understanding after a long few seasons that the gas is not much of a threat anymore. Not to mention he is also mega thick and easy to hit. Caustic's ultimate gas grenade is insane though, as it has no counter once it is down on the ground, and is one of the only abilities that purely can be used for assaulting enemies, defending the squad, or dropping it to revive the squad. Caustic isn't bad, but he just isn't meta anymore, and I would much rather have a legend like Wattson who can defend areas and also heal up the team. We only had one straight B tier legend, which does move us to the first B plus legend of the newly buffed and fan favorite Mirage. It took a long time, but Mirage has finally ascended out of the lower tiers of legends for me. Don't get me wrong though, and not to start off with being negative, but the changes to Mirage are not going to greatly ascend him into S tier like some may wish. Much like the previous Crypto and Wattson buffs a year ago, Mirage's buffs help enhance the kit to those who already love playing him. Mirage and his Revive E now get 3 seconds of cloak or invisibility even after they get up off the ground. This is huge, as 3 seconds is more than enough for you to position yourself into cover and start to reset or heal up. If Mirage is healthy, you can even make a counterplay while you are invisible. As for the other part of Mirage's buff, having the bamboozled enemies get tagged and tracked in real time for a few seconds is going to greatly let you make plays with both his tactical and ultimate. Since you can see where players are moving, you can more appropriately make sneaky plays or just understand what the enemy is doing. Keep an eye on the Bamboozle King, as he could go up even further in the ranks as the season progresses. Definitely give him a try if you are a previous Mirage fan or if you haven't used him in a while. Almost in the opposite sense, the legend who has slipped the most this season and has finally fallen from being a top tier legend for nearly 2.5 years is going to be Bloodhound. Bloodhound got absolutely gutted when it comes to their scanning capabilities. Not only does the active scan not last as long, the ultimate has no scanning benefits anymore. The combination of these two things really makes Bloodhound be more of a general knowledge and intel gatherer rather than the combat and killing machine they once were. Personally, I understand the change, as Bloodhound is more or less morphing from a scanning legend to a pure tracking legend. This is shown by how they also have the White Raven with their ultimate, which will help lead Bloodhound to the nearest enemy squad. Bloodhound is still a great legend, but not having a ton of scans in the ultimate is kind of weird after how long and how great it was for so long. You can still move around like a speed demon, so you do have some playability, but overall both Bloodhound and the squad is not going to be able to make as many crazy scan and assault plays as they once could. Next is Wattson. Wattson in my eyes has really come around a lot in the past few seasons. She is absolutely more of a ranked legend, so if you are looking for more of that, she could be ranked even higher. Wattson has a complete kit that all works off of one another, and this does make for a very satisfying and fulfilling experience if you can master her. Fencing areas and holding up areas can be done pretty quickly, and the flexibility of 12 fence nodes also means you can control a lot more space than some of the other controller legends. If you are in a fight or you need some extra support, her ultimate pylon is there for clutch saves or just to heal the squad after a fight if you are running low on shields. All in all, Wattson has a very good kit of abilities, and depending on the player, much like many of the other legends, she could be ranked even higher. She's a B plus legend for me, mainly due to her slower playstyle and mostly her lack of pure fighting capability. Even though the fences can be used in this manner, it's not really what she is intended to do. Rampart continues to be one of the most forgotten or slept on legends in all of Apex Legends, as she continues to gain steam and relevancy over the past couple couple seasons. Rampart is definitely one of the most misunderstood legends as well, as most think it's just sit behind the wall and boost your damage output, but really, she shines when you can play her in a tactical way by blocking off doors to keep enemies in a building, or gaining angles and using great positioning to your advantage. I'm only ranking her in B+ because I do think the current meta changes are going to hurt her a little bit, and that steam that she was building could be stopped. This could include the increase in viability to fuse with his new class perk, and the same with Mad Maggie and her class and shotgun buffs, as the drill is a Rampart's worst nightmare. Since the Rampage does return to the floor, she now has another LMG to help boost her passive. I do think the ultimate minigun is a little weak, not in damage, but overall usefulness. If used at the wrong time, it can create a really easy avenue for enemies to wipe the floor with you. Definitely give Rampart a go if you want one of the most tactically challenging legends who can also help you survive a little bit longer, even more so considering she is a controller legend. The final B+ legend is going to be Mad Maggie. Maggie saw no direct adjustments from the previous season, although the class and meta revamp has helped her quite a bit. Because of this, you can really place Mad Maggie in either C or all the way up to A tier, depending on the player and how some of the other legends do shake up. Her tactical drill is 100% the thing that carries her, as if you're an aggressive player or squad, you can create a lot of opportunities with this. The speed boost you get from the Wrecking Ball ultimate is nice, but the damage, displacement, and noise I find very unattractive when you are pushing up, and I think the ability is kind of forgettable unless you are going up against some very specific legends. As for her passive, the shotgun speed boost is also pretty nice, and the shotguns did get a sizable increase this season. It is worth saying that I do think it's a little bit too situational and weapon dependent, kind of like Rampart's passive, and it could lock you into certain playstyles which you may not like. Of course, her other passive of tracking enemies for a brief moment when they do get hit is okay, but will require the player to be in a very specific range to make use of it. I do want to address Mad Maggie's use in the ALGS. She did shine when we watched some of the Split 1 playoffs, but this was more so because of how much utility her drill has in a slower game environment, where cover is literally everything and there are 30 pros around ready to beam you in a ring 4 scenario. Unfortunately, this is not how the everyday player is going to experience Apex or Mad Maggie, and I think the excitement of her needs to be tempered a little bit, but she's definitely pretty great now. If you hate playing with randoms or you just want to chat with myself and the community, hop into my community Discord. We would love to have you. These videos also take a huge amount of time to make, so hit that like button and subscribe for more. That is always on the way. I greatly appreciate the support. There are so many legends at A tier this season, which are the amazing meta and viable legends. This also shows how healthy Apex Legends truly is when it does come to the roster of legends. We start with the legend who had one of, if not the worst hits this season, right there with Bloodhound, and this is going to be Seer at a straight A. I almost want to put Seer in a class of his own between B+ and A, but I slid him into A because I do think he will still be useful. What makes Seer really great, I don't think is actually unchanged. It's just been heavily reduced. Seer still has that crazy combat ultimate, albeit it does take a little bit longer to come back, but it is still incredible to counter that third party that's pushing in or just push enemies. The tactical is still insane at stopping players from resetting a fight, knowing their status and where they are. There is nothing really missing here, and it is why people should still want to use Seer. As for his passive, I do think it got hit the hardest. You cannot per se track enemies as much in real time as you once could, and this definitely could be tough. I also think that this nerf to the passive is going to actually nerf the tactical as well, because you aren't going to be able to place it as accurately. But even though it isn't as accurate, you still know relatively where someone is, and just knowing that someone is around at a whim is kind of enough. I think Seer is still going to be very valuable, especially considering how hard Bloodhound got hit, but I do expect that pick rate to drop quite a bit at the start of the season. The legend who continues to be my sleeper legend for those looking to improve or just have a ton of utility in both the early to end game is going to be Loba. Loba is purely just that support legend who can always be helpful. Everyone always needs loot, and just getting it faster means getting more fights, and it means improving a little bit more. The passive definitely falters if you are at anything past the early game, which is understandable since you are not having as many opportunities to run over and get that purple or gold item. As for her tactical bracelet, movement capabilities packaged into a support legend is definitely solid, and her black market is always great, from the early game looting to that end game armor swapping or just getting a lot more ammo in hot areas. Being able to now craft teammates cards though in a crafter is of course just a really nice bonus. It does mean Loba has more of a reason to bracelet out of a bad area if her team is already knocked or dead. Loba is going to be the legend for you if you hate looting and you are just looking to take as many fights as you possibly can. A legend who also had no changes this season but kind of saw that hidden class buff is going to be Octane. I'm not going to lie, I really do think Octanes get a bad name, and it's become mostly just a meme that an Octane player is going to stim into battle or stim away from the team. This happens, but not nearly as often as you might think. Since Octane is a skirmisher now, he can of course see those care packages, which is pretty cool, but not necessarily going to really change the game. Octane's 3 abilities of the passive regen health gain, stim to speed into or out of fights, and then that pad to maneuver himself and the squad around still makes him one of the most natural legends to play. This is going to help you focus on gun skill and overall be less worried about using an ability. If you want a simple, fun, and satisfying legend to play, Octane definitely still has a lot of usefulness, and it does show by his high pick rate at pretty much all ranks and all modes. One of the greatest surprises this season that I was not expecting is Lifeline getting a couple really nice quality of life buffs. Much like Loba, she also has the ability to now craft teammates cards, which makes the most sense that our resident healer has more ways to get the team back into battle. As for her abilities, the care package coming in much faster just means you can move on sooner. You are not holding a flare gun up in the air that says come and kill me and steal my loot. This was one of the biggest gripes I had in the care package. It was just too slow and it broke the flow of games. Not much to say about her healing drone. It's still very good and a very powerful ability for post fights or even during fights. Lifeline can now revive players with a much reduced slow effect when you start it. This lets Lifeline be more mobile, aggressive, and just have a lot better chance at getting a revive off without getting beamed. Her buffs don't really change how she is played, but they greatly help her be relevant. I think if you're a solo warrior and you are playing anything ranked that is below Diamond, Lifeline is actually pretty insane in these lower ranks where players are not as push heavy, meaning you can get the revive off easier. And for general play, and especially if you're playing solo with randoms, Lifeline is actually really great just so you can help the squad get back up a little bit faster. Someone who has slipped a little bit for me from the previous season is going to be Gibraltar, not because Gibraltar has had any nerfs, but more so because Apex Legends is just evolving. As player skills increase, the need or per se want to use Gibraltar isn't as high. This doesn't mean he is not useful though. Gibraltar is one of the best legends in the game in a high tier environment or high ranked lobby, but again, this is not a rank specific tier list. He has a lot of utility with the dome shield to help the team reset or re-engage. The passive gun shield is also one of the most incredible abilities to farm damage and evo shields through poking and not having to waste healing items. His ultimate does take a lifetime to recharge, but it can also be very good to force movement or again, create a moment of relief. Like a few other legends that are lower than him, there are some legends who do similar things to Gibraltar who just have a little bit more viability in today's meta, mostly because their kits are a little bit more newer or a little bit more adaptable. Don't sleep on the OG Gibster though. He's definitely great if you want a very high skill ceiling legend with a lot of use cases. Vantage is our final straight A tier legend, as I do think her mix of recon, movement, and offensive properties mix very nicely together. I don't see a lot of talk on this season 14 legend, and I do think she is a little overshadowed by the mega buffs of a few other legends that we did get. Her passive ability is incredible. Knowing what shields enemies have and if they are a full squad or not better assures that you are taking a good fight or if it is even a free fight. Not to mention having a sniper ultimate that can tell you all of this at the same time you are softening enemies and boosting damage from all other sources on your team is a little underrated. If you do connect some sniper shots and you know they are down a player, you can then capitalize on her movement through a quick tactical which has just so much flexibility and it does come back pretty quickly. If you like being an info gatherer but also want movement and assault properties, 100% send on Vantage. I have a few legends at the borderline S tier of A+, and we start off with Fuse. Fuse's abilities have no direct buff this season, but Fuse getting put into an assault class is actually massive for him. The main reasoning being is that Fuse can just have less stacks of ammo since he can hold more per stack now. Less room for ammo just means more room for grenades. Combo a gold backpack and this perk, and Fuse can stock up on even more to absolutely decimate his enemies. Not a lot more to say about Fuse. He's been getting increasingly viable as the seasons progress, and the mix of grenades, his tactical knuckle clusters, and his ultimate motherload really makes for a very good offensive experience. If you want to farm your first 2k, 3k, or 4k badge, Fuse is a very good pick as those clusters are free damage every 20 or so seconds. Do not miss out on this legend who did have a sleeper buff. Another difficult legend to rank is going to be Bangalore, who I also put at A+. Bangalore is kind of that jack of all trades legend who is really in a category on their own. There's very few legends in Apex who can support the team with smokes, assault an enemy team with smokes, get both aggressive offensive and defensive plays in with that ultimate Rolling Thunder, and have a lot of escape artistry with the passive Double Time or even assault properties with that passive. If played properly, Bangalore can be one of the most frustrating legends to go up against, and the reduction to both Seer and Bloodhound scanning capabilities in the meta of Apex definitely makes Bangalore get a large bump in the right direction. Do not forget that also her getting assault perks is just an added bonus. If you want a legend who is pretty simple in terms of how to use but also is very multi-purpose, Bangalore is going to be it. Pathfinder is up next at A+, and he has had quite the shakeup this season, which does help him when it does come to not only his fighting power, but also his team rotational capabilities. Getting about 60% the length of zip lines increased to about 350 to 400 meters is absolutely absurd. Also, traveling much faster on zip lines is a nice bonus, as it does make you harder to get beamed, and again, creates a lot more unique, aggressive playmaking scenarios. All Path has to do now is look at the individual care packages, and his zip cooldown is going to be reduced, and he is going to get a zip line right away since he is a skirmisher legend. This may sound small, but this is absolutely going to be huge for Pathfinder and his overall travel in the game. This means every game at minimum, you should be getting down to 100 or so second zip lines with little to no effort. Pathfinder's grapple still remains unchanged and is one of the best abilities in all of Apex Legends. He was already a very high picked legend due to his high skill ceiling, fun factor, and some usefulness, but now having him be even better does make him a top tier meta contender. I will say that Path has the power to be an S tier legend, so we will have to wait and see as the season progresses to see if this does shake up to be true. For now though, I do think his hitbox makes him a very easy to fight legend, which hurts him quite a bit, and it is going to keep him from the top. S tier, which legends are the must pick, incredible, or best of the best of the best? These legends can firmly be implemented into any squad and have a ton of viability with very few weaknesses. We are going to start with what is probably my most controversial pick of the entire list, and it is going to be Horizon, just narrowly squeaking her way into S tier still. She did see a nerf this season, but she is still going to be everywhere, in my opinion at least. Horizon can no longer shoot with perfect accuracy when going up her lift, but the nerf to this really just hinders those who are playing her in a very loose sense in pushing everyone. Whether you agree with it or not is not really the point of this video, and the reason I am putting her in S tier still is because she did get a buff of letting you go up that lift 10% faster than you used to, and in a lot of ways, this might almost be better than the nerf to that accuracy in the lift. This makes you harder to hit. You can simply just get around enemies faster, or you can reset and get healing items off without getting hit as much. In this sense, I think Horizon is basically the same in terms of her overall power. The rest of her kit is still incredible, arguably the best passive in the game, and a black hole that is still pretty underrated. Definitely don't discard Horizon. She's still going to be the real deal. Second to Horizon is someone that I gave a little bump over last season, and it is going to be the newly buffed Wraith. Wraith has always been an incredible legend, even though that tactical has been nerfed for a long time, and the portal wasn't as great as it could have been. But if we look at Season 16, Wraith is back, as her portal distance was doubled, which massively opens endgame rotation options and getting through open areas. Not only this, running faster from 50% portal energy to 0% is actually crazy, as you are harder to hit. You can start off the rotation by running with the tactical Q, and as you come out of the Q, you can then just start to run naturally faster, meaning the entire duration of her portal, you are simply just a little bit more elusive and harder to get down. One thing I don't think is talked about enough is just how Wraith is such a small legend as well. She is so hard to hit compared to a lot of the other legends, and this does alone make her very good in a close range fight. And of course, her tactical can still be solid to keep yourself alive in a lot of bad situations. Do not sleep on Wraith and her new portal. I think she's going to be one of the most picked ranked legends this season, and she may even return to the ALGS. We will have to wait and see. This may come as a surprise to some, but I am giving Newcastle the S+ rating, as he is truly one of the best legends in the game and also one of the least picked legends, which I do think is kind of criminal. But since we are rating on general power and combat and support capabilities, I'm having a real hard time picking any legend in Apex who can simply just do more than Newcastle can. Revive the team while moving to cover, fight enemies with the mobile tactical shield, which can allow you to more or less bubble fight or use the shield as a way to help enemies after they do get revived, then an ultimate that mixes in movement, defensive control, and just creates something out of nothing. Let's also not forget that he did get the pure buff of also being able to open those blue loot pills and craft teammates cards, since he is a support legend. If you want a legend who has a fairly high skill ceiling and a lot of viability and is straight up just amazing at everything, it's gonna be Newcastle. Sharing the top spot with Newcastle is gonna be once again Valkyrie. Much like the other S tier legends, all Valk's abilities are are just so good. There's not a lot to really say about Valkyrie at this point that you don't already know. She's still one of the best rotational legends in the game for the team, as well as an ability who can just simply let you take more fights. The map rotation of the season also helps her quite a bit, since the two smallest maps are not in the game, but Valkyrie's ability to clean up fights and just push the envelope with her jetpack should not be slept on, and her tactical just helps support this type of offensive playmaking. There's just so much that she can do, and if you aren't using her, especially in ranked, I think it is kind of a throw. If you are wondering what the best weapons are in Apex, check out this video, hit the like button if you enjoyed, it does help a ton, sub for more, and I will see you in the next one.